Welcome to Dr. Ruscio Radio, providing practical and science-based solutions to feeling your best. To stay up to date on the latest topics, as well as all of our prior episodes, make sure to subscribe in your podcast player. For weekly updates, visit drruscio.com. That's drruscio.com. The following discussion is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first speaking with your doctor. Now, let's head to the show.
Hi, everyone. Just a few fairly important updates. The past 8 months have been incredible. The clinic has not only grown, but grown stronger and even better than before. In working with Doctors Joe and Rob, I've learned how to better teach the model that I practice, where important updates can be made, and how a team can be more effective than one clinician in solo practice. The evolution has been from my solo practice to the Austin Center for Functional Medicine 1.0 to now the Austin Center for Functional Medicine 2.0. I've been working diligently behind the scenes, tweaking and updating our paperwork, our clinical systems, our treatments, our data gathering, data organization, reporting, and patient monitoring. I've refined the algorithm to be even better than it was before. I'm excited to announce we've just welcomed 2 new doctors to our team, Dr. Hannah and Dr. Omar, who are the beneficiaries of the Austin Center for Functional Medicine 2.0 clinical systems. And how confident am I in our clinical team? Well, my mother is working with our health coach, and my father just started working with one of our doctors. So about as confident as you can get. Collectively, we are moving towards our goal of reforming functional medicine. We are gathering data on our patients and working toward publishing our data, and we have taken big steps in this direction. So you are part of something big here. You're not only a patient we aim to serve and help, but also, as one of our patients, you become an example of how people can improve their health in less time and for less money compared to what appears to be commonplace in the functional medicine field. So I encourage you to look forward not only to potentially working with me, but also with any of our tremendously skilled, attentive, and empathetic clinicians. So if you're a patient waiting to be seen or someone thinking about applying, I really welcome you into the clinic, and I hope you will continue to move forward. We'll be so excited to work with you, of course. Or if you have not yet reached out, I hope you will, because I am just so proud of what we are doing. So much so, I'm even referring 2 of the most important people in my life, my mother and father, into the clinic to get healthcare. I feel you just can't get anywhere else, or it's quite a rarity to get it in other places. Not to say we're the only game in town. There's many good clinicians out there, but I really feel what we're achieving now is something special. And so thank you for being a part of it, or thank you for waiting to be a part of it if you're about to be seen soon. And if you have not yet reached out and you're in need of help, we would be pleased and honored to work with you. Hey everyone, today I have back on the podcast Dr. Kevin Wallace to discuss a clinician's perspective, him as someone who's using peptides quite frequently in his practice, on how to best use peptides and kind of picking his brain on how he's using them, and also how I can modify some of the experiments that I've been running with things like tesamorelin, CJC. We also discuss some peptides for sleep, some peptides for mitochondrial function. So this is definitely where we are going to the not being evidence limited in my saying of let's be evidence-based but not evidence-limited. This is an area, peptides, where there is not still really much evidence. There's some evidence for some peptides, but even the more well-studied peptides, like perhaps tesamorelin, which is FDA approved for treating abdominal obesity, doesn't have many studies on it. So this is that edge of the envelope where I'm trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what maybe has evidence showing that a peptide supports a certain mechanism of growth hormone release or potentiation, but doesn't really seem to have any clinically merit-worthy effects. So per the usual, I'm open-minded on the one hand, but on the other, a bit skeptical. And I'm fairly certain that with peptides, there is something here. I'm just concerned that there's maybe one effective peptide for 10 that aren't that effective. This is based upon my experience, which is not that extensive. I've used a handful of peptides, so take that with a grain of salt. But that's the best conclusion I'm able to come from in looking at some of the evidence and also marrying that with my own personal experience. Okay, so with that, we will go to the conversation with Dr. Kevin Wallace. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Dr. Ruscio Radio. This is Dr. Ruscio back again with Dr. Kevin Wallace, our peptide guru. And going to have another powwow on peptides. Kevin, welcome back.
Oh, thanks, man. It's I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me back on the podcast. And I think it's been like 2 years ago.
Yeah, time
flies, man. I know. I'm about to have a little son.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Congratulations. You moved out of CA, so
yep,
that's all good, man.
Well, I've mentioned on the podcast before that I had quite the experience with tesamorelin, and I gained about 10 pounds. And so I figured, let's bring you on because you're the one who advised me on trialing tesamorelin, and it kind of opened me up to more experimentation with peptides.
Okay.
And I'm always, man, it's like this two different voices in the head. On the one hand, wanting to look underneath every rock that could improve performance, cognition, energy, body composition, insert goal here.
Yeah.
And on the other, knowing that there's probably more stuff that's ineffective, snake oil and placebo than there is that helps people. So, just to kind of reframe for the audience and get them up to speed, I had been on CJC with ipamorelin for several months. And, it's hard to say if that helped or if it was the fact that I started training at the same time with Mike Nelson or around the same time and was being much more diligent about sleep. And around the same time-ish, the COVID-19 associated lockdowns went into effect. And so you were hardly ever out late because there's nowhere to go and there's nothing to do.
No.
So, and I'm still trying to figure out, do I feel a notable impact from CJC and ipamorelin? Just, sharing my personal experience here. When I went on tesamorelin, it was unquestionable because nothing else really changed. Yet I gained about 10 pounds of muscle and body fat went down, visibly so. I can't say I measured. So, I mean, it was just, and I wasn't even necessarily using the tesamorelin with that objective. I was just saying, well, I wonder what else I can do to kind of bolster growth hormone, stay energetic, stay youthful. And that was, pretty remarkable. There were some other sides to that coin, though, which, and Kevin, I'm just kind of putting this all on the table so you can give me your perspective. So pardon me for monologuing here a bit, but
no, man.
I do think that, and I'm almost positive on this now, that at the 6-week mark, even though body composition was pretty stellar, I was having bouts of anxiety, which is awful, by the way, and which I never have. And I just ended up getting kind of burnt out. Now that burnout may have been from really pushing training hard, but I'm more confident that the tesamorelin may have been antithetical to good energy levels because I came off it for 6 to 8 weeks, went back on, and I noticed that my work days started feeling harder than they normally do. And I started feeling more easily overwhelmed by just the array of decisions I have to make in any given day.
Yeah.
So, and that may be a trade-off, right? I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but it depends on how bad does someone want to make body compositional gains, and are they willing to sacrifice, energy and maybe a few points of cognitive output during the course of a day.
Yeah.
So, those are a few things that I've noticed. You're consulting patients pretty regularly with peptides. So
yeah,
I figured we could use my experience as something to learn from. So I'll throw that out there on the table. And what do you make of all that? Am I going to live or?
You're definitely going to live, man, just because you have the cognizant issue or of like understanding. It's like when you probably reach your max and like I said, cycling off or dosing off. So with tesamorelin, it was FDA approved to actually treat obesity in people that had HIV. And so the concept of having somebody obese being on, having HIV, obviously it increases inflammation and possibly some issues in regards to other medications that would work in fighting HIV. And so they created tesamorelin to help on out with that. And they have obviously good studies that show obviously its main goal was a lipolysis agent and getting rid of obesity. And now in the anti-aging realm, we kind of took that to exactly do what your experience was. Well, I'm doing everything right. So this is how usually tesamorelin comes into play in regards to my practice. I'm doing everything right, but I'm still not able to lose the weight that I want, or I'm still possibly having issues in regards to sleep, mental clarity, which is weird because a lot of times growth hormone deficiencies improve those. And so in your case, like obviously being on it and sitting there going, well, I've actually started to reduce some cognition. Then it kind of comes to me in regards to as well, did we overwhelm the receptor? Did we go ahead and have enough cofactors to go ahead and actually keep those gains going? Or was there a problem in regards to some of the body's ability to get rid of some of the waste product in regards to some of the metabolites? So I know genetics comes into play a little bit, and sometimes people test, and sometimes people sit there and say, studies show that maybe there's something wrong with your body's ability to go to the next metabolite and the body for the liver to get rid of it. And so some of these things can increase anxiety into the system in regards to not being able to get rid of some of your catecholamines, which is like adrenaline, some of the byproducts of those things. So in your case, going back through, and I think it just in the concept, I think we might have cycled it maybe a little bit different and maybe come off of it a little bit sooner and then added it back on and had a little bit more of a rest period instead of, I think, maybe trying to really overwhelm the system and then coming off of it and then staying off it and reintroducing it back in. So I think there would have been a little bit different of a cycle on, cycle off process. In regards
what
to
would
that,
what would you recommend in terms of the cycle off period? Would you say more than mine was roughly 8 weeks, I believe?
Yeah. So, well, actually 8 weeks would probably be plenty, in that regard. So the concept comes down. So when you were on it, and like you were talking about, better sleep. And so I know obviously some of the side effects that you had was a little bit of an impingement syndrome, which we obviously can get with growth hormone just because of the process of it to increase some of the collagen aspect. And so we get these impingement syndromes like a carpal tunnel, sometimes maybe a thoracic inlet, these different types of things. And so the process of you coming off of it, how was your cognition? Like you said, it's like it was actually decreased a little bit.
Yeah, it's it's hard to say if it was cognition or if it was just I had less energy. And when you have less energy, it's harder to think clearly.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things I think that's so appealing about academics and caffeine and why so many college towns have coffee shops, peppered. It's just because stimulation helps with difficult work and difficult thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It took a few weeks. And actually to share a very vivid example of this, I had started back on about 3 weeks ago and took maybe 3 weeks. And then I felt like I got back to more of my normative baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 weeks in, and this was actually last Friday, we were doing the interviews for the next clinician that we're going to hire at the Austin Center for Functional Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's me and Joe Mather from the office and also one of the prospective applicants. And I get hit right in the middle of the interview with this intense wave of anxiety. And it's very interesting to kind of observe what your mind or the voice in your head is saying. And this is where I think meditation is vastly helpful, because it prevents, at least me in this case, from kind of overreacting and just going off the rails. But I had this really sharp, striking feeling of anxiety and just feeling like I needed to get off the call, and not liking being confined to having to be on that call and kind of be present and pay attention. It's one of the things that meditation has been helpful, just to be able to feel a feeling, see it for what it is, let it register, kind of say, oh, that's an interesting emotional signature. Let me kind of put that on the shelf, step back and examine it, and not necessarily be enslaved to it. And it passed after maybe a minute or two, but that was the first real definitive data point I had, in that from the first round of tesamorelin, when I was having anxiety, that it wasn't just a coincidence, because there was that repeat. And it could be, as you're saying, it could potentially be catecholamine associated. And it makes me wonder if there may be this overshooting of optimum. And I think men make this mistake often with testosterone. They think some is good, so more is better. And they feel good on the way up, and then their receptors down regulate, and they feel even worse than they did before, because they overshot kind of the Goldilocks zone. And so I wonder if with tesamorelin, it was just more than was needed. I didn't need to gain 10 pounds of muscle. I didn't mind, but it just tells me that, this maybe my body had a unusually strong response to it. It could also be that these things are chemicals that are, a bit foreign to the body. Hey everyone, I have a treat for you. Are you on a low FODMAP diet or thinking about starting a low FODMAP diet? Well, if you are, I'd like to tell you about Modify Health. Modify Health is the first Monash University, who does all the FODMAP research, low FODMAP meal delivery company in the US, which ships also to all 50 states. All meals are fresh, fully prepared, tasty, low FODMAP, gluten-free, simply heat and eat. And Modify Health also has optional dietitian support if you have kind of advanced needs. So definitely check them out, and you can get 25% off your first week of low FODMAP meals and free shipping with code RUSCIO25, that's RUSCIO 25, when you visit modifyhealth.com. But yeah, what's a typical experience on tesamorelin? How do you typically reconcile these things?
So usually with the majority of the people that I have on tesamorelin, I don't think they have exactly maybe the same mindset as you do in regards to, I want to experience optimal, and I'm willing to take it to kind of like that area where it feels like you said, well, is this optimal? Well, numbers might show optimal, like you already know when you see people with labs, well, numbers show great, but you're not optimal in regards to how you feel. And so I think in the strategy of dosing, it's like the 4 other people that I have strictly on just tesamorelin, the dosing strategy we've had to change around, because I think you put the nail on the head. It's like we go by typical dosing strategies or what's taught to us, and then we don't accommodate to what specific need the patient has. And so that's where I think a lot of adjustment has to come into play. And so in regards to how many micrograms, like I said, we're utilizing tesamorelin and some of the on-off stages, and then making sure that obviously everything is fitting into everything else in life. Okay. And so I think the 2 people, or like I said, about the 4 or 5 people that I have on it, haven't experienced specifically your side effect, but I don't think they've taken it to the optimal concept as well. I think it's like their just goal is like, well, I want to lose a little bit of weight, and I want to go ahead and be a little bit better with my sleep. And so we've dosed them on out, and those things have remedied. And so we're not taking it past that point where I think someone like yourself and myself, I want to see what happens when I say overdose it, almost like homeopathy back in the day. It's like, we'll overdose and see what the symptoms are. And so what creates the cure is obviously possibly reducing the amount, or finding out what other things are possibly going on in the system that your body's not able to possibly recover from, the process of now introducing another receptor, the process of creating waste, the process of trying to get rid of that waste. Are you having more oxidative stress, especially within the brain? and other peptides can come in to, like I said, get rid of those reactive oxygen species that maybe growth hormone is actually increasing a little bit. So just because of the concept of increasing your metabolism. So, from a study standpoint, I don't necessarily know. Just from a practical standpoint, it's like I normally go ahead and either wean people on off, take them up to, like I said, the CJC, the ipamorelin, which I don't think has as a pronounced effect upon that, just because tesamorelin, I think, is a third generation, which has a little bit better stability, and it works actually at the receptor site for, I think, around 2.5 hours, as compared to CJC and ipamorelin has about an hour and a half. And so those are the things that you might actually be doing with the peptide, but you do everything right as well. Calorie restriction, you're sleeping, you're probably taking your amino acids, like arginine, those types of things, to go ahead and actually boost growth hormone. So now we have to take that into play as well, because if you're doing everything right naturally, and now we induce a peptide, we could be going above and beyond what your body needs because you're doing everything right to begin with.
And you pose an interesting thought, which is, if I'm running, fairly close to optimal, there's always stuff to work on and to improve. But, day to day, when I have everything dialed in, I feel like I'm humming along at a pretty good clip.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I'm humming along at a pretty good clip, and anything that doesn't push me further to optimal is very noticeable. It's almost like someone who has really been working at a fast mile time for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. They may change. In fact, this is something that, so Dr. Rob at the Abbott is a pretty avid runner. And I believe he was telling me that he notices that when he wears different shoes, he'll have a 10-second differential in his mile time. So it's kind of like that. So I'm assuming, though, that if people are motivated enough to come see you and experiment with peptides, mm-hmm. they're probably in a similar boat, or is that not representative of the other 4 people who you're currently working with this model?
Yeah. So it's tough for the general population, because I think being in the medical field and knowing, we probably, you and I, and probably the other people that are really involved into really anti-aging, probably understand how to supplement appropriately. We do understand the role of sleep. And so the general population that comes in, from a foundational standpoint, I have to work probably with that more. And then when we introduce tesamorelin, then it becomes down to like the typical understanding what their goals are. Not too many people, I think they say they want to be optimal, but I don't think too many people know exactly what optimal is. Or optimal for them, might be like you said, well, I need to ride my bike and I do 30 miles a week, as compared to someone that wants to do a 6-minute, 5-minute mile. Totally different, and then in the mindset and how your body utilizes resources. So with the tesamorelin, I've had 2 people that have done really well and put on the bulk, because the concept, they go, well, they're on testosterone, as well as doing some of the supplement protocols that I put forth. And now we have them on that, and they go, you know what, I'm feeling 80%. What else can I do to go ahead and assist myself on out? And usually one of the easier things is to go ahead and say, put on a growth hormone, checking their IGF-1 and their IGF binding capacity, those types of things, and try to get them into optimal ranges. And then we bring on tesamorelin, and then all of a sudden they're like, wow, much more lean, much more in regards to aesthetic look. Obviously it's like we try to do some things with grip strength, those types of things. If they can go see someone that really knows how to measure these things, just so I have valuable measurements to sit there and say, yes, we have our own protocol and it's actually working. So if you're, still benching only 150 pounds, I have you on tesamorelin or something like that, and you're still doing 150, then something's going on. Or your grip strength, which is obviously measured good mortality and vitality. So those are the things I try to go ahead and have people do, just to make sure that they're actually performing well. Then obviously do proper blood labs on a regular basis as well. So I just really think the mindset's different between someone like yourself that's in that field, and you understand health, you understand that you want to strive to be 99.9% optimal, just because our body's just naturally not 100% efficient as compared to the general population. But the tesamorelin works for everyone, whether you're a mom, that just had your child, of which, Dr. Sundermeyer is coming up to have hers. And so we're probably going to go ahead and do a trial When I say trial, we're going to put her on probably a little bit of growth hormone so she can get back into her activities appropriately in that regards. And so I think it just all becomes what the goal is. And that's, I think the process, being the practitioner, which you know, and being the person who studies is way different, just because you and I have to see people and meet them on where they're at, as compared to someone like yourself that sits there and just comes to me or someone else and sits and say, I just want to be optimal. I already know you're doing everything right, so let's just do this. So.
Hey everyone, cognition is one of my most valued assets. And there are trillions of cells in your body, including the brain, and these cell membranes are integral to our brain function and cognition. Now, these membranes are made up of phospholipids, which can degenerate as we age. I've been experimenting every morning with a phospholipid complex supplement from Body Bio called Body Bio PC, and I am feeling sharper. Their complex is liposomal, meaning it bypasses absorption in the GI and has all the phospholipids that make up our cell membranes. If you're looking for brain support, head over to bodybio.com and use the code RUSHO20 for 20% off their Body Bio PC. That's RUSCIO 20 at bodybio.com. Now, outside of tesamorelin, and question purely selfishly motivated, but are there any peptides in particular that you find to be best for overall energy levels? I'm assuming something maybe like CJC with ipamorelin comes up, or some type of mitochondrial peptide. But the reason why I'm asking, and kind of what I'm learning here, is at least in just my reflection from my own personal experiment, is the tesamorelin may have been more anabolic, and to put on and maintain that muscle wasn't worth it for me, because my chassis, so to speak, was already, I think, pretty good, and to add more muscle to it was antithetical. Now, perhaps if I had been a bit overweight and a bit sarcopenic and I needed the muscle mass, that would have been a good gain for me. But as someone who's already weight training fairly intensely 3 days per week and also doing fairly robust cardio 3 days per week, the additional muscle gain was just a drag on the system. So, what would you recommend for someone like me? And I'm also assuming there's probably a decent facet of our audience who are saying, okay, body composition would be nice, but it's not necessarily what I'm trying to optimize for. I'm trying to optimize for, energy and vigor.
Yeah. So, if we think about mitochondria, the typical, what everybody knows is the powerhouse of the cell, which is, just kind of like a misnomer in regards to what is utilized. So, ATP production is what our body, obviously our cells utilize for fuel. So trying to make the mitochondria as optimal as possible. What you already put down the basics: sleep, nutrition. And, I always have to, you reiterate that over and over again, because if I give you something like tesamorelin, but you're still putting down, a 2 liter of Pepsi, I don't care what goals you want, you're never going to reach them. So, first is obviously attacking those types of things. And then, if we want to go ahead and have specific for energy, MOTC, which is a mitochondrial peptide that just helps the body activate AMPK, which actually helps the body start to produce a little bit more ATP. And there are different peptides that feed into the system, like 5-amino-1-MQ, that actually helps recycle ADP to ATP, those types of things. And so, along with your cofactors, I always got to reiterate, your B vitamins, niacin, tryptophan, which actually, I think a lot of times people are either amino acid deficient with tryptophan, just in regards to the chirorenin pathway that actually helps regulate NAD and immune function. And so those are usually where I start out with specific energy in regards to mitochondria. It's a tough thing, just because if people come to me and then they have energy, but I know they're immunocompromised, and that's where their energy has been zapped in regards to the body trying to fight off something, then I think we talked about thymosin alpha, different ones to actually help regulate the immune system, and then also BPC 157 to help the body repair. And then after you do those two things, then they actually, a lot of times energy will start to come back, just because now our body has like, that hierarchy. Well, where does my energy need to go best? And to go ahead and it's like, well, if you want energy for better cognition and I want to be able to go ahead and have energy, 12 hours out of the day, but yet I have an underlying kind of infection or something's going on. Those are the things that we try to improve first, because that actually might take care of it. And you won't need something that's extravagant or expensive or, just something that's not going to go ahead and actually target what you think or what your body needs at that specific time.
And how are you typically using the BPC? I know there's a few different oral preparations that are available outside of prescription now, or are you doing injections?
Yeah, it's like, well, if they come to me, in your specialty, in your realm, in regards to GI problems, I obviously, if they can't absorb squat, then sometimes oral forms, but they are now starting to make BPC sprays and suppositories. But myself, it's like I've found really good results in regards to using the sub-Q injectable, just because obviously now we don't have to go past the digestive system to get into the body and actually have it perform its work, even though I've utilized all of them. And a lot of times when people can't do injectable, they don't want to, basically inject themselves on a daily basis in an oral form. But I still have to make sure that they can actually absorb it, just so they're not wasting their money in regards to not having, like I said, a malabsorption problem or Crohn's or something like that, that you want it to go ahead and be able to be absorbed appropriately. But a lot of times if I have a system that's very debilitated and they want to do growth hormone, we actually start with BPC just to try to rebuild the system along with, typical regenerative kind of protocols. And then we put them on growth hormone. Otherwise, we find that we actually have a tendency to slow the process down when you get on growth hormone, just because, again, the body sometimes doesn't want to pick itself up if it's trying to suppress the immune system from fighting, viral loads or bacterial loads or, parasites, these types of things. Sometimes the body actually puts itself, our immune system, into the tank because it doesn't have the resources to actually put a fight up. And so sometimes we have to build that up and deal with underlying issues and then starting people on growth hormone.
Something that runs parallel to this, that is, just to be clear for our audience, it's currently a hypothesis. It's something that I've just started testing in the clinic and will likely be at least 3 to 5 months until I can report back confidently one way or the other. But I suspect that, and more so for men, there are underlying breathing and sleep disorders like upper airway resistance syndrome, which is very similar to sleep apnea, that are undiagnosed and that are causing people not to sleep well every night. And it's what's telling about this is that it's hard to know that you have the problem. I was just diagnosed via 2 different home sleep tests with mild airway resistance or mild apnea. The tests use different indices to report, and how they map on to being specifically diagnostic is a little bit debatable. But mild on the one, mild to moderate on the other. To give an example of what this looks like, my pulse rate on one test peaked at 88 during sleep, and the other it peaked at 123.
Wow.
And my suspicion, also knowing that 20 to 40% of US adults snore, and that's a dead giveaway that there's some sort of airway collapsibility or lack of tone in the airway, is that these problems that we're seeing in terms of low testosterone, presumed low growth hormone, presumed infection or weak immune system may all be derivatives of, in a subset of people, this poor sleep. Just knowing that, as anyone can probably attest, if they go a few nights where they go to bed too late or they have interrupted sleep, they feel that immeasurably. So, again, I'm trying to bridle my enthusiasm, because if I'm right here, then this opens up a huge therapeutic avenue for people, in the sense that working with a myofunctional therapist to do some exercises, maybe using something like it's called a relaxator. It's essentially this piece of plastic you put in your mouth and you breathe through. It's almost like playing a flute or something. It gives you resistance to breathe out against, and that apparently is supposed to help with tonality of the musculature. And there was one study that found playing a woodwind instrument actually reduces obstructive sleep apnea. So it's not to say that the only way to resolve this is with a CPAP machine, which understandably is not a very attractive option for people.
No.
So anyway, just, to throw this out there for, our audience, as I've been chronicling these issues in sleep and interviewing different sleep experts and various orthodontists and dentists, that's the picture that's kind of starting to emerge. So sorry to kind of take a tangent there, Kevin, but this is something that I think runs parallel because there could be a deeper layer here that's causing people to need all this support, and myself included, right? I may perform better and not have any inkling to want to pursue any more of an edge once I have these sleep things bettered out. And maybe not, but I guess we'll see.
No, I agree. The whole, I think sleep is one of the lost arts of healing again. For some reason, everybody that comes in, I think I see, it's like, 6 hours. And I'm like, you know what, your body's running, your body now has become more maladapted to your lifestyle. It's not adapted, it's maladapted. So that whole concept, I only need 6 hours, I'm perfectly fine, or I feel good. But the concept is like, when does those things catch up? And so unfortunately, I think, with myself and yourself, we get them when they have to be caught up. If we could have caught, if we could have, let's say, produced this test that tests people and we get them early enough, then it's like, well, are we going to have this major kind of functional deficit, throughout our lifetime? And that's where I think, I wish health would go more towards, is that kind of thinking, rather than we finally get them when they're broken and, we have to really use wrenches to try to fix stuff, rather than it's like, dude, it's like, you just, this is why sleep's important. And I don't even know if that's taught in school anymore.
Yeah, no, I remember way back when I was going through kind of health education in middle school and junior high, probably more so junior high. There was some, but it really wasn't taken seriously. And this is where I think that parents and parenting really is crucial, and just what you model is how health's going to need to be taught. We did have a good health teacher, but it kind of falls flat if you're, how old are you in junior high? 13, 14. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're going to go home and say, well, Mom, I want you to cook this way. And also I want to tend to my sleep hygiene. It's a big ask for a kid who's 12 or 13.
It's like, that 10 o'clock show that's really kind of risque. It's like, no, I'm not going to try to stay up and watch that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but it brings a valid point for what I see clinically, though. The concept of immune system, and imagine your body not being able to sleep. And obviously when we sleep, that's when the body now can go quiescent and actually heal. It doesn't have to worry about digestion of food, and it doesn't have to worry about all these other parameters, and it can actually go start to heal itself. And like you said, it's like, if I don't sleep well for 7 days or anything like that, I'm done. I mean, I'm physically offline.
Yep.
And so, but the cool thing is they actually have a peptide called delta sleep inducing peptide that can actually help in regards to people that have either, when I say self-induced insomnia because of their lifestyle, or they actually have the inability to produce a deeper sleep. So this peptide has been utilized quite well in regards to getting people to finally have that ability to go to sleep and actually stay asleep. So it does work a little bit more in regards to neurotransmitters and helping with serotonin and some of the GABA composition of it, but it also helps them out, I think, with the MMDA receptor. Again, so I'd have to do more research specifically, but I've utilized it on about 5 people that I've tried everything, melatonin and reversing sleep cycles in regards to, like, they go to bed at 10 and they say they get up at 6, but now they woke up and they only got 3 hours. What I try to do is work backwards. I go, well, if you get up at 6, then I want you to stay up until 3 and actually not just sleep 3 straight hours rather than doing that. And we work backwards, and that helps. But then we put them on the delta sleep inducing peptide, and it actually helps them break that cycle. It has assisted people getting off of Ambien in that regards as well. Just because I think a lot of my patients have been on Ambien now for so long, it's like their biochemistry is just really not efficient in that regard. So it is a peptide I have utilized to help on out with those sleep issues, beyond what we normally try to do in regards to helping people sleep.
Yeah, that's one that's on my list to try. And I'll be curious to kind of do a pre-post Aura data analysis on that.
Yeah.
My sleep's generally pretty good. It wasn't for a while. I have a few kind of peculiar reactions to things that took me a while to figure out, and they'll manifest as poor sleep. And once I sorted that out and was a bit better about sleep hygiene, my aura has been pretty good. Still working on some of the airway piece, but that peptide is one that I remember you mentioning in conversation that I wanted to try in addition with a mitochondrial peptide. So those will probably be the next two things I filter into the mix here.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing with the DSIP, it has the other side effect. It actually increases LH, so luteinizing hormone.
Yeah,
so
that's
the
nice.
concept, I have guys that don't sleep and they don't want to be on testosterone. I don't want to give them HCG or gonadorelin. It's like, well, let's just try the DSIP. And so obviously they sleep a little bit better. Their LH actually has increased. So I do have some good results in regards to checking pre and post, DSIP in regards to luteinizing hormone and their testosterone labs. And so I was kind of surprised by that. So I'm like, well, let me try it. And so it actually helped with my levels as well. And it definitely helped with sleep. But after I was done with it, I was actually still able to maintain it. And so that was the good thing about this peptide, that you don't have to, the people that I've had it on, they haven't had to be on it like for a lifetime. It was like, why replace Ambien with something else? They got to take it for a lifetime.
Right.
Those types of things. So the good thing about it is actually helped to reset, just my sleep cycle. And so I was like fantastic with that. And obviously
that's
sleep
awesome.
is probably the most important thing. So
yeah. No, it's great that it's going to be a longer term effect. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
exactly. And there's a couple of peptides, I think BPC, but a lot of the peptides can be interchangeable, and in regards to, we don't have to be on them, especially if they do goal setting and they reach their goals, and then it's like, great, well, let's see what happens. And so a lot of times people reach their goals and then they'll stay very well, but then they'll fall off the wagon and then they'll come back. But I've had a couple of patients that, again, with growth hormone, calorie restriction, sleep, how calorie restriction obviously works is because ghrelin, is released when you don't, you fast, and ghrelin is basically mimetic in regards to helping release growth hormone or synergistic. So that's why if we're always having food in our stomach, our growth hormone actually will start to go ahead and decrease. And so having, like I said, fasting and ghrelin actually released will actually improve that. So if they get on those kicks, like we were talking earlier, you and Tessa Moreland, but you do everything right, and they're actually able to maintain their IGF-1s look good. They're not collapsing. They're not falling off the planet. And it's like, great. Then they just need to see me, when I guess the rails fall off.
Yeah.
So.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Ruscio. In case you need help, I wanted to quickly make you aware of what resources are available to you. If you go to drruscio.com/resources, you will see a few links you can click through for more. Firstly, there is the clinic, which I'm immensely proud of the fact that we deliver cost-effective, simple, but highly efficacious functional medicine. There's also my book, Healthy Good, Healthy You, which has been proven to allow those who've been unable to improve their health, even after seeing numerous doctors, to be able to help them finally feel better. There's also our store, where there's a number of products like our Elemental Heal line, our probiotic line, and other gut supportive and health supportive supplements. Health coaching. We now offer health coaching. So if you've read the book or listened to a podcast like this one, or are reading about a product and you need some help with how or when to use or how to integrate with diet, we now offer health coaching to help you along your way. And then finally, if you're a clinician, there is our clinician's newsletter, The Future of Functional Medicine Review, which I'm very proud to say we've now had doctors who've read that newsletter find challenging cases in their practices, apply what we teach in the newsletter, and be able to help these patients who were otherwise considered challenging cases. Everything for these resources can be accessed through drruscio.com/resources. Alrighty, back to the show. Well, and speaking of seeing you, and I don't mean to cut our conversation short, but for our audience, I burned the first 15 minutes of our interview flitzing around with this new computer that I have, and needing to get mic setups and logins all calibrated, and I'm booked a little bit tight this afternoon. So I hate to cut off our conversation a little bit early, but we've referred a few patients over from the center to work with you for peptide, advising what you do via telehealth. Tell people a little bit about your practice, and if they wanted to tinker with some of these things, how they can go about kind of linking up with you.
Yeah, like you already know, the COVID thing kind of forced us into doing more telemedicine. And so we just said, screw it. We basically closed our physical practice, even though I still do a little bit of regenerative injections here in Tucson. But they can find us at integrativetelemedicine.com. And that is our website. Along with doing this podcast, we do have a thing called a Sunday Buzz. The last one we did was actually on growth hormone. So if you go onto our website, you'll be able to see the Sunday Buzz. The next one coming up is called the Work Program, but myself, Dr. Sundemeyer, which pretty much sees a lot of the females. I see some, she's going on maternity leave. And so everybody that needs to see somebody, you will see me for a while. Even though she's much better looking to see online, it's like, I'm not too bad.
So I guess better to be the man behind the good looking woman, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. You just see me fading back into the bushes and stuff like that. But integrative telemedicine, we are fantastic. We see people throughout the United States in regards to how assisting with these types of processes. And then obviously, with Dr. Ruscio, it's like all the GI stuff. I'm actually starting to refer like those people to you, man.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you. That's where I nerd out. So happy to help there if I can.
Exactly, man. So I'm like, all right. So, our practice obviously focuses on peptides and hormones and, all those types of things to try to make us optimal as we can.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, I really had a pretty interesting experience with tesamorelin, which came through your recommendation, and you kind of walked me through the protocol. And I'll probably ping you at some point to try the sleep peptide and maybe a mitopeptide. And, for our audience, I'm always running some kind of experiment. I've got a vagal nerve stimulating unit here that I put away and was collecting dust, but I was at an event, met a neuroscientist who told me that his HRV jumped 10 points once he started using his vagal nerve stimulator once per day. So I'm always tinkering with stuff, and all these things are getting built into the optimization program at the clinic, which, I don't know exactly when that's going to roll out, but it's kind of the clinic 2.0, meaning clinic 1.0 is getting you where you should be with diet, lifestyle, gut health, and these fundamentals. And then 2.0 is how can you run higher, or run faster, jump higher, have better energy, better sleep, perhaps a peptide referral.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. And
I would be much interested into the vagal tone, because I'm having everybody do a cold water face dunk.
Yeah. How are women doing with that? Because every time I mention cold water to women, I get the look of about to get smacked in the face.
Yeah, so exactly. So I've had a couple people. So, like you already know, stuff that gets on the dust, all these old notes and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I remember this. Let's get them into parasympathetic tone, from sympathetic dominance. And so the cold water face dunk has done well. But I'd love to, if you can send me an information on the vagal thing so I can look at it and possibly purchase it and have people purchase it, man.
Yeah, the unit's called Zen. It's a Zen unit.
Okay.
The instructions on the app are very unhelpful. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to use this. And so I'll send you some notes. And for our audience, if or when I feel like that's something that's worth sharing, it'll be something that we'll do a podcast about or an article. So stay tuned on that.
All right, man. Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man. You're always awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Dr. Ruscio Radio today. Check us out on iTunes and leave a review. Visit drruscio.com to ask a question for an upcoming podcast, post comments for today's show, and sign up to receive weekly updates. That's drruscio.com.